Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of Lack of Focus, episode 89. Insert Mad Max pun here. I am your host, Ed Horner, and of course, alongside me tonight, my good friend, Mr. Sean Dorsey. Sean, how's it going, my friend?
Good, Ed. How you doing?
Outstanding. And our producer extraordinaire, one Mr. Chris Sheriff. Chris, how's it going, my friend?
Good, thanks, Ed.
We've got some exciting things to talk about, don't we, tonight? Everyone is making their mad puns on the Mad Max Road Warriors kind of thing. So we're going to kind of get a little bit more of a discussion. We did actually record a bit of a in focus some of the stuff that we had talked about as far as the stream that had done that AMG had done and some of our reactions to that, but we kind of just like glanced over it. Like we're really going to get into the weeds on a lot of this tonight, and of course we're going to cover over our flight decks as well. So Sean, I'll start with you. What have you been doing lately, my friend?
Um, I don't think I've played any games. Oh, hold on. Let
No,
me
you
think.
mean I think
I played this. I played a game that I just picked up called X-Wing on Tabletop Simulator. I think that's what it's
yeah.
called.
I think I did the same thing.
Yeah, I think so. And
Crazy.
we actually kind of played two and a half games if you really want to get into it, because we kind of what was it, last Saturday, a week ago, when we did the Chris's kind of homebrew furball type game.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I totally forgot about that one. Yeah, we did. I've been playing more X-Wing the last 2 weeks and than I have in
Yeah,
probably the last 3 months. Holy cow!
yeah. So we got a little bit of X-wing in, testing out the new some of the new rules, and had a pretty good time actually. Um, I'll take Chris's terminology to how our game ended. We never really counted points, but we had a pretty good game, I thought, between my aggressor, the aggressors, is that what they are? The IG-88, B and
yeah.
C, and
Robots.
your yeah,
A little bit of
and
little bit of rebel beef. We did intentionally set some of the conditions on that game because we really wanted to give the random turn order after dials the road for those who have not been in the know.
Yeah,
We really wanted to give it a try, so we intentionally set up a game where everyone was initiative 4, so that it came into play every single turn of the game.
yep. And the first game I played was against Chris, which Ed, you weren't really there for on that one.
Sorry,
Um, no, it's okay.
yeah.
That was a pretty good game. Um,
I think you guys played while I was at work. There wasn't really much I could do.
No, it was more so that we could all get some games in. That's all.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that one came down to Chris. You played Darth Vader in the advanced tie,
Yeah,
and
X1
then you played four Tie Fighters. And
Inferno
you can
Squad.
say
Yeah.
who. Yeah, yeah. Infernal
So it was
Squad.
Iden Versio with Disciplined, Gideon Hask with Disciplined, Del Meeko with Disciplined, and then say the one I can never pronounce, Sena Mayana, or whatever her name is, with marksmanship. And
Yep.
Vader had some upgrades. I think I didn't. I had brilliant evasion, which kept him alive,
Yes, it did.
and um, then I had rockets, but I don't think I actually fired them at all because there was
Nope.
never a time where Vader and all four of them had a shot that would have been better than just Vader shooting.
So, Chris,
Right.
you're telling me that Vader flies a ship other than the Defender? I didn't know
Well,
that.
I was playing Sean. I didn't want to be mean.
Um, so basically, our game went to time for the most part. We kind of called it about the time Ed got online. I had my IGC was down to 1 health, and my IGB was, I think, at half points, wasn't it?
I think I'd just halved him, yes. I'd done 5
Yeah.
damage because you'd got him the shield upgrade, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
shield upgrade on him,
yeah.
and and one thing for everybody to understand is that list is a list I built with road in mind.
Yeah, and
So
I really want to get into that conversation because I think that's going to be a bulk of what we're going to be talking about. To be honest with you, but you designed something to like, okay, well, whether I go first or I go second, it doesn't matter because I still
there
have
was in Chris's and my game, I only had one turn where I had to like sit and think about it. And it was really just a choice of 4King over a rock or going straight over a rock, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was that circumstance.
Yeah, I remember that
And
turn. Yeah,
yeah. And it was an easy choice. You just 4K over the rock. And um, it was a pretty tight game. I got a lot of really good shots on.
on
Chris
Vader
had,
early. I
that sounds
yeah,
sold
like a
Vader up the
theme.
river.
yeah,
I sold
Vader.
Vader up the river. Yeah.
Yeah, Vader kind of, you almost sold him down the river, but I also had a first round shot on Vader, which
Yeah.
was
Well, that was it. I was like, if I put him in this position and you do like the specific set of moves that you, because it meant you had to go, what was it, 4 straight and then
four straight,
and
and
a
then
banked boost. And I
yep,
was like, if it does that, I barrel roll out, but then I'd misjudged. I think there's a rock that stopped me barrel rolling out.
that is
Um,
correct. Yep, there was a
so
rock that
I
was.
just sat and focused, but like I think in 2 rounds of shooting, Sean had him down to 1 health,
Yep,
Mm.
and
and
then I had,
then I just played keep away with Vader for the entire game.
yeah, well, I had that third round of shooting that you evaded every.
Yeah, the dice came good in the end.
Yes, yeah. So like Ed, the way my dice were against you, that was how Chris's defense dice were against me with Vader.
4 evades, 4 evades.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll talk about that, but
yeah,
Four dice, 4 evades. I'm just throwing
yeah.
that out there.
I
Oh,
think we would have.
and then naked, just all paint like hits and crits on attack dice. Yeah, just little things like that.
Oh man, you don't. Look,
See,
look,
I'm
look,
not
Ed.
blaming the dice. I'm
You
not.
you lost because you're a shitter. Okay, the
Yeah,
dice
no,
were
no, 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 no.
irrelevant.
I flew like shit. I
Like,
didn't exactly build a competent squad. I just threw some stuff together. So I'm not even attempting to blame it on the dice. I'm just saying there were some aberrant dice rolls. That's all I'm saying.
I mean,
At key
so
moments in the game.
no, I mean this is something that I think would not us as the three of us. I know, like we'll have a laugh about it, kind of thing. So I'm not. This isn't supposed to be an attack. Sorry, Ed, but
No, of course not.
it's going to sound like one.
I doubt it's
But
gonna be
like,
taken that way, but go ahead.
I took what 4 damage on Vader through
Yep.
his force and his it was force and focus tokens from 3. It was 1 ship shooting me in 1 round, then 2 ships shooting me the next round. So effectively 3 shots
Yes, and
that could do damage because I evaded. I mean, I had to spend everything to evade the tractor beam and stuff like
yep,
that.
I did get you once on the tractor beam because I put you on the rock, and then
Yeah,
you spent the token to turn,
yeah,
which didn't put you out of harm's way. That next round of shooting that I landed like I think I landed 3 hits the first time, and then I HLC'd
yeah,
you for 2 or 3,
yeah.
and then I landed 3 more hits, and then I had to tractor you, and somehow you were able to just get out of all of that. Where in reality,
Well,
Vader probably should have died, didn't die.
well,
It's
what I'm saying is, like, I took a bunch of damage from shots I didn't need to take, so I put him in a bad position and took a risk of dialing in this move. Where if Sean does this, so like, yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if Vader still had like no damage on his hull. I wouldn't have been surprised if Vader died because
right.
like that's what happens, isn't it? Like Sean got the shot on the TIE fighter like the rain later. It was like hit double crit, and I completely blanked out.
Right.
So then it was
Right.
like, okay, well I'll just spend my Iden charge now then, and
Correct.
it feels shitty for Sean because that's what Iden Versio does. She makes your
But it got
opponent
it out of
feel
the
like
way.
shit. Yeah,
But it did get it out of the way, which
yeah,
when you're playing with Iden on the table and you're against Iden, you want to get that out of the way as early as humanly possible so
yeah,
that you can get damage through ships. And TIE fighters, because they're rolling roughly equal dice on defense, and you can play defensively and offensively with TIE fighters. I had to knock that thing out. And then
yeah.
I did enough damage. I think I half pointed all
You
but one of your other TIE fighters.
No, I think you got half on one,
Was
maybe
it one?
two. But like the only thing I honestly think came down to dice luck was the fact that I snuck one of my crits through with
Yep. Yep.
because I rolled a 2 dice attack not in bullseye and rolled a crit.
A
So
crit. Yep.
immediately spent it
Yep.
and to because it deals the damage under the shields.
Yep. And
Um
then you get
uh,
the extra dice
yeah.
on the one. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that buffs up my offense and my defense on everybody because of the
Yep.
rerolls and stuff. So,
Yeah.
like, outside of that, like, it's really easy to look at dice rolls in isolation.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's like I was saying to Ed in your guys' game, because was it Ed kept winning first player for a bunch, and then when he
Oh
wanted
no no
first
no
player, he
no!
kept losing it.
I only won first player
On the
in
first
one
turn.
on the first
Yeah,
turn, and never won it
Ed,
again.
Ed, you got it on first and second turn. And then
yeah,
Oh,
after
maybe that's
that.
what. Yeah, maybe that's what it
Yep.
was. Never any turn what I would have considered of consequence,
yeah. But
because
then,
there were points in the game where I was gambling that if I win first turn, this is going to be great because I'm going to be able to block here and block here. If I don't, it's going to be a bad move, and it was a bad move
yeah.
almost
But
every
Yeah.
time.
what I mean is like, if Ed rolls 3 hits and Sean rolls 2 blanks and a crit, Sean wins first player. But those rolls still count. Ed's dice still rolled three hits.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like, so you know
And
what I mean? It's rolling dice is stupid to try and assess the like.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Exactly. Because in our game, Chris, I think we were about even. I think we were about
yeah,
three
and
and
that's it.
three.
I basically what I'm getting at is if we took the dice rolls from all of our games, I think the results would fall well inside the bell curve.
oh, I'm sure they would.
And like and that's why I say when it's easy to get onto this is a giant tangent that I didn't plan on at all, but that's how we do the show. But like I hear it a lot, and this is like I said, it's mainly because I've been on Facebook today, and like some of my friends were playing in the Gold Squadron Alderaan final thing, whatever. And it's like, yeah, oh man, like, the variants really got me, and I leaned into taking elusive on ships as well, which Sean can talk about. But like, you, you I'm I don't want to say mean, but like that's not true. You didn't lose because of variance. You lost because you made bad choices. The
Yes,
bad
Hmm.
choice might have been taking a list that relies on variance.
Correct.
exactly.
You know what I
I
mean?
I
Like,
100% agree with that.
and how many times did I used to say when we did Nova about like, oh my, I don't mind it when my red dice are cold. It's when my green dice are cold that it really annoys me. That's because I kept putting myself in positions to get shot. My ships would die, and I'm like, well, now I don't get chance for them to come back. And you have seen it in games. You have it happen all the time. Well, your dice are completely average, but it doesn't matter because the game's already over. Like you suddenly got like one health ship left that just won't die.
Yeah,
And
or it's that. Oh, I'm gonna roll 3 dice. I got one shot on you, and you roll your dice, and they come out completely average on your. You're right. It's all it's that old
yeah,
fallacy of counting only counting the misses and ignoring the hits kind of thing.
yeah,
It's when the dice rolls are inconsequential to the game, you never track them mentally in your head.
yeah,
You never see. It's always whenever it comes up to being a consequential dice roll in the game that you're like, oh wow, I've had 2 dice rolls in a row where I
Yeah,
really
it's like
needed to make 5
I'm
aids, and I
sure
failed.
Sean had a HLC. I think it was a HLC shot, maybe a range 1 shot on Vader, and rolled 4 focus results.
Hmm.
But he only has 2 calculate tokens.
Right.
So then he spent both to convert 2. But like
No,
that
actually,
wasn't a bad roll.
actually, what that one was, Chris, was I rolled 2 hits and a focus. I spent the first calculate on the main gun shot. This is a range 2 shot to get 3 hits, and that's the one where you were able to get. I can't remember if you nattied 3 evades or if you did something to get the third one. And then I HLC shot you, and that was the one where I rolled 1 hit, 1 blank, and 2 focus, and I was able to pull the second one in for the second hit, and then you rolled well enough to where it didn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
But-
like dice that come up like if you roll like I suppose what I'm getting at is if you roll 3 hits and a focus and I've got a focus token, is that any better or worse than rolling 4 focuses when you've got a focus token?
Yeah.
And
No, but with
with our
calculates it feels worse. So you would track that as a bad result. It's not the dice's fault that you had calculate tokens, or that you bumped so you didn't get your action, or that you took target lock and re-rolled them into, blank
Right.
blank hit. Like it's not the dice's fault. It's just
no. And in the list that I'm playing, I'm more relying on calculate than I am on focus or anything else, really. And in Ed and my game, once we hit, after the first round, because you went straight, and then the second round you turned in, and that was the round you were able to get the single shot against IGB at range 3,
Correct.
and didn't do any damage. And then
Which I wasn't really expecting to. It's like one of those pot shots you throw it out there to be like, yeah, whatever happens, happens.
And then I was shooting back, and I got damage on you. And then it was the next turn because you weren't expecting what I did, and I got first player on the roll, and I just came in.
On that round, that was the round that I got 13 attack dice on 1 ship and didn't put a single shield of damage on it. That's the one that for me was a little frustrating because that was the turn that I banked on going second and said, if Sean's going to be here, I'm going to have Braylon Schramm in range 1. I'm going to have 10 Numb at range 2, and I'm going to have Jack Porkins and Garvin Dreas in the back. Now, I bumped Dreas, and I was hoping he would have had a focus token because I wanted to pass it around. All of my ships had hopeful. Like, again, you can tell from the list, I didn't exactly construct this to be a competitive 2x 2b list. It was more of a, hey, these are 4 initiative 4 pilots. They're in X's and B's. I know how to fly those. It'll be fun. Let's just throw it on the table and see what happens. But I lined up my shot so that I had 13 red dice on 1 IG and didn't put a single damage through. And that was just like, oh, well, that's the game because now I can't outmaneuver you. My hope was to at least cripple one of your ships to the point that, okay, I can focus that one down on the second turn, and then it's just 1 ship versus 4. Becomes a little bit different.
I mean, so I will preface this by saying that it was your first real game on TTS.
Agreed.
Your first game with this list.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and obviously you've not played a bunch of X-Wing for a while.
Yeah.
But
your
opening was shit. You sold out Braylon and let him get isolated from a Wookiee tractor beam shot off Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Sean's first shot did no damage, so he got to fire the second one, which was the tractor beam to drag him forward, so it was into range of a second IG.
Correct.
So like, yes, you had one round where you rolled 13 red dice and got nothing, but the reason you didn't get a second good round of shooting was because you didn't play well enough.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that 100%. Because what I did on the following subsequent turn was I went for broke and said, I'm going to make the anticipation that I'm going to win the roll, and then I'm going to go through and block him and have a whole bunch of other shots set up. I did not win that roll, and instead either overshot or got bumped myself, and the game was basically over at that juncture because you were picking ships off at that juncture. So like that for like
the other thing that hurt you too is you bumped Porkins twice.
Yeah, I did. Poor Jack.
Which after the first bump caused the second bump. It was the way that everything ended up after that second turn that kind of screwed you up too.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember, Ed, is that you're playing against a list that is literally was 100% designed to take advantage of the new rules.
Oh boy, was it? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk
Yeah,
about what?
I want to talk
I
about
think
I
it.
we
think
should
we've got.
probably finish the flight deck first.
Oh well.
I mean,
Yeah.
just saying, because we'll get through and then you'll be like, oh yeah, I played 40k as well, and we'll talk about that for a bit. Then we'll come
Yeah.
to Road and
Oh
we'll
no.
already discuss
Well,
all of it.
here I'll make it easy on everyone then. For mine, I played a couple of games of 40k. We're bumped back down to 1,500 points because we can actually complete games. Because there are new rules out for the Tyranids, I wanted to give those a shot, so I took those out to the game store this past Tuesday, and I basically beat Logan in 2 turns because Genestealer Bomb is still a fantastic strategy in 40k. You take the Swarm Lord, a squad of 20 Genestealers, and a Brood Lord. You fling them into combat into turn 1, and they never leave combat after that because they just bounce from unit to unit and never get shot, and then they just destroy everything they touch. It was fantastic. Had a great game. It was fun. And then, of course, we're third session into our Alien RPG, which has been oodles of fun. There's been some interesting shakeups and moving. The mutiny on the ship alone is delicious. I sit back and I'm just reveling in it. It's so much fun. We did have one of the characters do something I was not expecting at all. And we lost that character, which is fine because it kind of worked out that Patrick took over the role of Miller. I bumped into this weird situation as a GM where everyone picked a random character, the characters they wanted to play, and nobody wanted to play Captain Miller, who was quote unquote in charge of the ship. So it put me in a role as a GM where I was not only playing the role of the NPC captain who's telling the crew what to do, but then the GM telling everyone what was going on. And I felt like I was pulling the crew along on a railroad for that adventure. So Patrick and I had talked about it after the second session. He's like, "Do you want to get out of that role?" I'm like, "Yes," because it feels bad for me that I feel like I'm dragging everyone along. So he had devised a plan on how he was going to get his character out of the story so that he would take over the other character. That didn't exactly come to fruition, so he went another direction. I'm saving that for people who are gonna tune in and listen to it eventually whenever Chris edits it all together in one big show. But it's an interesting twist. And then all hell broke loose as far as the crew. There's a mutiny going on. There are sides being taken, guns getting pointed at each other. It's great. It's absolutely delicious. I'm loving every minute of it. And we could probably button this up in one more session, I think. Potentially one more session we're going to be done, which is we'll talk offline as far as when we're getting back to our D&D campaign, but I think it's going to be perfect timing. So that's it. I want to finish more X-Wing talk because I think that's far more interesting conversation, but that was my
Fine, I don't have a flight down, I suppose. God. God.
Oh
Oh
no,
man.
you can have
No,
one.
that's
Absolutely.
no
I
one
that's
cares about no one wants to hear about Chris's deployments and like how I put a rock here and then I moved another rock here and then my opponent put their rock there and then what
it was
I did
that
was
was it for
I did a
me.
force
I wasn't talking about
No, I'm
you.
just
I
gonna
was talking
I'm
about
gonna do a Nova Squadron radio.
me.
Sorry, I don't know if it'll pick it up through RTX voice, but I'll rustle my notepad and everything, so you get the full Nova Squadron feeling. There's
Yeah.
a blast from the past.
Richard, for those who
Oh
don't get that
man,
joke, Richard, who used to be on the show for a bit, would actually keep notes of every game that he played, and he literally you could hear the page turning when he was going through his stuff. Love you, Richard.
Richard's fine. Richard's notebook could die in a fire. Yeah, I did a bunch of Necromunda. I did some Halloween painting.
Ooh,
I did.
I totally missed out on you painting your ships because Halloween ran really really late, and
Yeah.
I may have had 1 or 2 glasses of wine more than I should have. So, like 9:30 rolled around, and Ed was like,
Oh,
"I'm going to bed now."
well, I was in dress up for all of the North Americans, or fancy dress for all of the Brits. So I had my face paint on.
I know. I saw the
Um,
picture on Facebook.
yeah, and then I painted a witch and a like spooky scarecrow kind of monster thing. That was fun.
So are we
Played.
starting? Are we starting Nuns with Guns November?
Um, I'm not streaming tomorrow. I was chatting with Sean before the show. Just the way this week's gone, I've had a bunch of like things keep getting moved around, and I just want a day chilling out with Jill. So
All right, yeah,
we're gonna have a
you do that.
family day tomorrow. We're gonna have a fire pit for November 5th, 2 days late because ended up having had to work on Friday night.
remember the 5th of November.
For gunpowder treason and plot. I can think of no reason why a gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
And if I'll let everyone let that hang out there and see if anyone knows where that's from. Drop it in the comments down
I
below.
don't I don't think it's from V for Vendetta.
Oh, it's
I
not.
feel like it is, but I feel like it's actually a British rhyme
It
that
is.
children have.
It
So
is, but
but
it was
that's like
in V
say
for. I was trying to see if anyone pulled a call out for V is for Vendetta.
no,
Fantastic.
that's because you're North American. V for Vendetta is quite obviously putting a call out for Guy Fawkes.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever heard it. And I'm sure for our mostly North American, not all, but mostly North American audience, I'm curious if they had picked it out or not.
I'm educating. It's not from V for Vendetta.
It's not.
That's like
The
me
original
saying,
source is not. You are
like,
correct.
that's like me saying that the fucking American Constitution is from the Patriot.
Wow, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Why not? Is it a historically significant event
It
that,
well,
for,
yeah,
there
I
you
don't.
go. Guy
Uh,
Fawkes tried to commit treason by blowing up the House of Parliament. Then, lots of years later, they made a sci-fi film about a guy who
well,
wears a mask.
technically, Alan Dean Moore did a comic book called V is for Vendetta that they then migrated.
Yeah,
The Wachowskis then migrated into a film.
yeah. Just like Mel Gibson made The Patriot. Exactly the same.
All right, admittedly, like that movie is historically inaccurate on so many levels. I can't even begin to describe how inaccurate it is. But it made me
The
hate,
English, I know.
hate,
Yeah.
hate. Not the English. The actor that played the command, who ended up going on and playing the voice for the Inquisitor, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was also in Star Trek Discovery. I can't remember. I mean, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but that actor, he's fantastic, and I hate him for it because he has played characters that I have hated so many times.
So speaking of his
Jason Isaac.
Jason Isaac, thank you. That's him. Yes, Jason Isaac. Love you as an actor and hate you at the same time,
yeah.
which means you're doing a good job.
So historical inaccuracies. Did you know that in Master and Commander Far Side of the World, um, the ship that the French ship that's like immune to cannonballs at long range because of the double reinforced hull or
Mhm.
whatever. It's actually an American ship. It was
That is
the
correct.
Well, yeah,
Constitution.
Constitution. Yep.
Yeah, but they couldn't make it correctly because the American audience wouldn't have gone watching a film with the Americans as the bad guys.
yeah. Well, and
So that's why we,
Master and Commander was a complete work of fiction. It wasn't based
no,
historically.
No, but it's
that's
based
where
on
it's
the Patrick O'Brien
yeah.
novels.
Right,
It's
right.
supposed to be the Constitution.
But
No, I know.
it literally
Yeah.
came down to the fact that the filmmaker, which who did a good job, didn't think that Americans could handle Americans being the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which I
yeah.
think is just it's horseshit, but you know,
I mean,
I
I think
it's
it's
not.
true. I don't think it would have had the success that it did
that is correct.
had. But,
But it still would have been a very good movie.
yeah.
It still would have. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what kills me is that was supposed to be like they were going to do like 5 of them. They're
Yeah.
going to cover all the books of the series, and
Yeah.
because the film didn't do as well as it should, they never did another one, which is a shame because it was such a good film.
Supposedly I heard that they might be doing the sequel.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't know how true that was. I did hear it though that it's in pre-production. I don't know.
Man, Russell Crowe's going to be
Was
doing a
that a
bunch of
Ridley
sequels.
Scott? Was that a Ridley Scott?
Well, yeah, and Ridley Scott has him for Gladiator 2, apparently, which I'm still not entirely certain how we're going to sequel Gladiator. But okay, so Russell Crowe's
I
going to be
don't
doing
know.
Gladiator 2 and Master Commander. Awesome.
Yeah, I would be in for that. I really like Master and Commander.
Yeah, it's
I do
it's
too.
a
It's
really good film. It's really
actually
well
one of
done.
my top 10 favorite movies,
Yeah.
and
I don't know if
it
it's that high
actually
for me.
it really made me like Russell Crowe as an actor.
Gladiator did.
Before that I did not really like him as an actor, but after that one, because of the way him and Paul Bettany just played off each other, it was like perfect.
Yes, I 100% agree.
The
But
way that him and Vision played off each other is pretty good. I agree.
The way that what?
Him and Vision just play off each other.
Yes.
I only know people by the Marvel names now.
By
Sorry.
the Marvel names,
Oh,
yeah.
well then, do we have to then go with he was Superman's father in
Jor-El. He was
Jor-El. Yeah,
Jor-El.
thank you. I was drawing a blank there I'm drawing a lot of blanks
I
today.
mean,
Yeah, I was gonna
if
say
Superman's in Marvel, yeah,
he's not. Well, I was gonna say, are you gonna go for the DC Marvel thing?
no,
No.
not like all of the actors just played superheroes in the DC films. All the Marvel ones, they personify them and become them in real life. It's not my fault.
Okay.
It's just popular
Understood.
culture. Not my fault.
Anything else
Okay.
you want to cover?
No, I
As we
think we've
devolved
delayed.
into great older movies.
I think old is the correct term now. Master and Commander is probably what 2004.
Oh, let's take a look. That's a good question. Is it that old?
I think so. I think I would have watched that after I was with Jill. So
2003.
I was a year off. Man,
2003. That's crazy.
18 years ago.
That's crazy.
People weren't born who are now out drinking in the UK and probably America.
And yeah, not
Oh,
legally, but yes.
I was gonna say they would just drink in America. It may not be legal.
Damn
Yeah.
it! Now I'm gonna watch that movie over the weekend. Is it on Netflix?
And feel bad. No, it's not on anywhere. It's really hard to find.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
If you have a Premier Hulu account, it's on Hulu.
I don't know what Hulu is. Hulu in Canada as well? I don't know.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Oh, it's on Amazon Prime too. Cool.
All right. Okay. I'll watch that later when I'm doing some painting. I did sit down to paint some Sean's
look at
building
that.
Primaris Captains.
Yep.
I'm painting 2 Goliaths to go with my Necromunda gang instead of painting any red stuff.
That's okay.
Because I was going to paint stuff for me for a little bit.
As though you should, but I'm at some
Yeah.
point in time, I do really want to influence you into printing those more. So I'm like, if I send him a box of stuff, is that gonna nudge him in the right direction? Going, oh well, now I've got to.
There will be at least one squad finished in November because it's part of my challenge thing. Will be to get my Taylor Crate Painters challenge for November will be at least 10 Sisters of Battle or whatever the squad size is that they are.
Yeah, Sisters come in 10. Well,
I don't know what they built for you. I don't know. I didn't build them, so.
The only reason I ask is because I'm getting a little bored with the Nids, and I'm getting a little bored with the Necrons. Only because as the competition level is rising, I can't beat my son, and I haven't been able to beat him in months. I'm okay with that, but now that Chad has switched over to playing Thousand Suns, now I can't beat him either. So now it's
You're
like,
just getting old. That's all it is.
Maybe it's the fact that his psychic phase takes 2 hours. Like, oh, psychic phase, and then my son absolutely. This is on Tuesday. I hear it. All right, turn one. All right, I'm going into the psychic phase, and my son goes, I'm sitting down. That's going to be 45 minutes.
So what you're saying is Chad was always an ace player? Oh man, just waste time so that the clock runs out and he wins.
Yeah, maybe. Classic milk on the clock.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's get it in. Let's get onto it.
All right, Sean.
Let's get into it. I don't know. Words are hard.
Words are hard. So you built a squad for our Thursday.
So let's start from the beginning, shall we?
All right.
So AMG have announced that one of the ways they are going to tackle perceived squad problems that they have with the game and to take the game into what they want it to be moving forward is that they're going to introduce random player order. So a way that had initially been interpreted by myself and others was that you just roll at the start of a game kind of thing. But
Hmm.
it turns out we were
Made
wrong.
sense at the
Yeah.
time.
So it's been abbreviated to ROAD, which is random order after dials. I think people drop the P for player because then it says road and you can make Mad Max jokes about how angry people are, you know?
I
So,
I can see where a little bit of the ire is coming from. I don't know that it's 100% justified, but I can at least see where their
yeah,
concerns are coming.
the thing that I find, what's the correct word? The thing I find most surprising is the stages of grief. People are stuck in people are stuck in bargaining because the people who were mad about random player order when it was rolled at the start of the game and the bids went away are now saying that that was okay. And
Yeah.
then with some of the other things that they've announced, they're now saying, oh, well, I didn't really have a problem with random order after dials, but this proposed bumping changes. Like, it's just every
Yeah,
step. So, oh
it's
no, the last change was okay, but this one killed. It's the thing that it reminds me of, Ed, is Games Workshop's going out of business, yeah?
I've been hearing that for a long time.
Yeah. X Wing's dying because of this change, yeah? Yeah. Oh no, no, that change was okay, but this next change, oh,
Sean, how many times has Magic been dying? Oh, this one set, it's gonna kill. It's gonna kill the game. Gonna kill the game.
yeah, the ban list is going to kill Magic. When they, if you recall, before they went to, what was it? Magic was like a standard, and then
You had different
like
types. There,
extended, right? It
yeah,
was
type
standard and
one.
extended.
Well, yeah, you like a type 1, type 1.5, or like 1.5 was everything that came before, but type 1 was what was going to be standard.
Correct.
And
And
that's when
then
they started doing block rotation.
they went to modern. And
Yes.
modern was going to ruin everything. And at the end of the day, everybody loves to play modern. Everybody loves to play legacy. Everybody loves to play. And you hear most people bitch about standard, because of rules changes and bans and
Well, the more common bitch is now about standard, the fact they're not writing cards for standard, they're writing cards for commander and they're writing cards for modern that just end up in standard and the power level is just way too high.
oh man, imagine writing cards for a format that's for fun that just gets people to play. Oh
exactly.
man,
That's
how
the
dare
that's
they support Commander?
If they didn't do commander releases independent of that, I would agree with you.
Oh yeah, it's all right. You tell me, Mister Ace player who likes a 20-point bid. Tell me how this is the wrong thing for Magic.
I never agreed with that. I never played that way ever. All right, so we've got random player order. So there are some wonkiness a little bit to the rules, but
I
let's
don't
kind of
think
get into
so. To be honest with
the
you, I
first
don't
turn.
have
The first turn.
I
Oh
the
yeah,
first turn, yeah, the first turn, which Chris pointed out and was a great, very, very good point. Where you're rolling before setting asteroids or rocks or whatever you want to call them,
yeah.
obstacles.
You roll for a setup phase for who's first player because that affects every game. So theoretically, if there's no overlap, I'm comfortable as a TO saying that you just roll for setup and then you don't need to roll every turn. So
Yeah, because
it doesn't affect anything. It doesn't
it's not
affect
going to have any
don't worry
effect
about
on
it.
the game at
But you
all.
always need to roll for turn 0 because in deployment the first player places the first obstacle and the last player places the last obstacle. So you've got a lot of control over that.
Yep.
I agree with that.
But
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 then
then it rolls.
yeah,
it moves forward. Like
yeah.
you still
So
keep that.
that roll lasts until after the dials are set in round 2,
Yep.
which feels off to me.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense, because if it were me making that rule, if it were me writing this rule, it would have been roll for first player for obstacles, and then you're rolling, and that's determined setup,
Yeah.
and then
And
you
then you'd
go in,
roll
then you
again.
would roll again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
Yeah, and
I agree.
I think it's I don't know. I think it's probably
Well,
just been
because
missed. I don't know.
what it
Like,
did is it affected the game that you and Sean played because it put the game into a situation where Sean was able to get shots on Vader on
well,
turn
no,
one because
it
he
didn't it didn't
knew.
that
affect Vader.
that
I
was
put Vader
positioning.
there because I wanted Sean to chase Vader. I
Ah,
didn't think he would get to Vader turn one, and I thought if he did, it didn't matter because my plan was that I was going to 5 straight. So then I expected to take maybe a shield from a one shot, 5 straight past, and then be okay. Then I realised I hadn't put afterburners on him, so that wasn't going to be the perfect plan. So then
mm,
I hummed and hard and ended up doing a hard turn away, which it meant that Sean's choices were really easy because he could just keep shooting Vader rather than having to pick between going after it. So again,
And,
I
and
just made
what?
a massive mistake. If I'd have done the 5 straight, Vader would have been fine, and that's
Yep,
what I'd planned to do: is hang him out for a turn, and then get out and bring him
right.
around and let Sean bash against the Tie Fighters. But
right.
I just fucked it up. It was
But
fine.
do you?
And
But
Ed, what you have to understand is Vader only shot twice.
Yeah,
no, I understand. I guess what my
yeah.
point is though is that knowing that you're going first or second,
So
going that deep into the game is a little bit of an advantage that they're trying to eliminate.
yeah, and yeah, that's exactly it. So the reason I thought of it is because my standard opening with Vader Defender and my so I've been running obviously with 2 Inquisitors, Fifth Brother, Seventh Sister, and Vader in the TIE Advance. All of those have boost. So I drop Vader Defender in the middle and 1 Inquisitor on each flank. And depending on where my opponent is and what initiative values they are, Vader and one of the Inquisitors does the 5 straight and boost, and Vader generally catches a shot in rain in turn one, which is probably 3 hits because like over 80
Because
odd
it's
percent of the
Vader.
time it's 3 hits. Like as long as I don't roll more than 2 blanks, it's 3 hits. So I chip a damage in turn one, and then Vader breaks off, and I play for position after that. But I'm already the fear's already there. I've got him.
Yeah.
Oh man, Vader's terror. Oh no, and then
Yeah, you're
you,
already up at that
yeah,
point, and you've already put that psychological advantage in
and
that Vader gets
yeah,
shot on turn one.
yeah. And if I know that I'm second player, I can do that with impunity, which is exactly the thing they said they didn't want. So
Right.
it's strange. Yeah, it's
It
just
it it
strange.
it does change the psychology of the game,
Yeah.
which
Oh boy, does
which
it.
which is interesting to me because if you have if you have the I'm gonna throw away 20 points just so I can possibly go first or second, that's kind of that's the psychology you're up against at this point.
Mm.
Because you're basically throwing away a choice. And now
So
people don't really have that choice.
yeah, I mean, outside of that thing, I want to get our biases out in the open early, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So outside of the fact that I don't like that aspect, I think there's a back and forth on the 3 dice. Like I understand it, I accept that it is better. I still don't like it.
Yep. Well, so, and I want to
Like
get I remember I started making this argument at the very beginning, and I've been
oh, then, yeah.
corrected.
Now you get to have it. Now you get to have a
Now,
conversation. We've
now I
had
get,
like 15 podcasts, and you finally get to have it in the correct
I
place.
finally get to have it in the correct place. So the one complaint that I saw was when I looked at that rule for determining whose turn it was. Rolling 3 attack dice, you're going to go crits, and then you're going to go focuses, and then you're going to go hits, and then you're just going to re-roll if it's still a tie at that juncture. I'm like, well, this is silly. Like, we've been determining random player order for years now. I pick up a red die, I say hit or miss, I roll it, and it works. Why? It felt like they overcomplicated it. I don't understand why it had to go that far. And then Chris points out to me that multiplayer games are going to be a thing. These are going to be the rules that are going to encompass all AMG events, which includes things like Aces High,
Yeah.
where you're going to have multiple players in play. So, okay, now that we have multiple players involved, 3 dice makes sense. And I'm like, but I still don't understand it. Why wouldn't you go crits, hits, focus? Chris, would you like to explain the logic behind this?
Okay. So it's an 8-sided dice. One of the
Mm-hmm.
sides is a crit, two of
That's
the
what.
sides are focuses, and three of the sides are hits.
Yes.
So it
It's
gives you that
legitimately that simple.
yeah, it gives you a natural progression, which feels like it's less likely to have ties.
Yes. And as soon as
The
Chris points
thing,
this out, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, okay, this
the
makes
thing
sense.
to remember is it's not. It's really easy to go to think of them as dice, and when you roll a dice, it's really unlikely if you roll 3d6 to get a tie because each side is unique.
Yes, it makes sense.
But when on a d8, when three of the sides are the same, if you use hits, that's more because you can have like if you number them. So side one is a miss, side two is a miss, side three is a miss, side 4 and 5 are focuses, 6 and 7. I don't know. I've done too many now, but
Yeah.
yeah. But you know what I mean. So there's more chance of having overlap if you go crit, hit, focus.
Right.
Someone like I'm sure Bob can come and correct me. And
Oh, I'm sure.
we'll send him
Absolutely.
an email. We'll get it transcribed. But
I do
yeah.
think though, with that, with that said, out of all the die rolls that we had yesterday for who was going first, we only had one tie.
Yeah.
And
Was it
that's
must
just
it must have been
it was
So
you
increasingly
and
for
I.
both
It
of
was
them.
it was you and I, Ed.
Oh,
It
maybe
was
I
our it was our third turn.
I do
Yeah.
know the math is a 7% chance of having a tie with
Yeah.
that breakdown of 3 dice.
And that
So
was the only
it
one.
should happen once a game in a 12 round game ish.
All right, so that was my bias number one, which
Yeah.
I have been corrected on. The only other bias that I
Oh
have.
no, Ed, you're right. I have the same bias. I dislike it. I just know that I'm wrong and that
Right.
the AMG are correct. Doesn't mean I
Yeah.
have to like them being correct.
And I agree. That's
Yeah,
probably a better way of it. I do have a bias thinking. I feel that it's wrong. I accept that I am incorrect in that
yeah,
view. It still doesn't feel right to me, but I accept that I'm incorrect. The
yeah.
only other bias that I have and I've had time to reflect on this since we played our game. One of the concerns that we had in first edition was that X-Wing was moving into the X-Wing the Gathering kind of um
Card game.
phase where it wasn't so much about the ships or the positioning, it was about building the correct squads and building the deck. It was all the cards. And what I'm afraid of, and I could be wrong, and I'm willing to accept if I'm incorrect on this, is what in Sean's list was a good example, is it's going to get down to a point of building the right list to play to that system, which goes into even further into the X-Wing the Gathering. I'm not suggesting that I'm correct or incorrect, but what I do believe is going to happen is in order to account for the variance on this, players are going to be taking upgrades to help account for those things like advanced sensors, ships that take, that do pregame moves like phantoms, things like that, things to allow them to, whether I go first or go second, doesn't matter because I'm going to have something I can do one way or the other. I don't know if that's good or bad for the game. I'm just suggesting that it's going to be a very different feel than we had before when you can just reliably know you were going first or you were going second
Yeah.
every turn. So that's
One thing.
that's my only concern. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that is one of my concerns.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get into it too deep yet. 'Cause I want to once we've done our biases and stuff like that. I want to
Yep.
talk
Well,
about
I,
how
I've given my
Sean built his list, kind of thing.
yep.
But
I've given two,
yeah.
my two.
But one of the things I do think about that is that when we're stress testing road, which is what we were effectively doing because we forced it to be an issue,
Mm-hmm.
then they give a big advantage. If I'd have run like what you
I
can
don't know. I think
do. You can do like if I ran my I5 resistance list.
It wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah,
it wouldn't matter. And I agree with you. 100, like 85% of the games that are played, this is probably not even going to come into
yeah,
play. It's not going to affect
Probably
anything.
even more. I think you're looking at mirrors, and you're looking at either either aces lists,
Or
where you're
generics.
or generic.
Yeah.
But if you're
I
yeah,
running a mixture, if you're running an average list, or you're running a list that you're building, or you're conceptually building a list not to play against road, but you're building a list to win games, the only time it matters to me is if you're mirrored.
yeah. I mean, I'll do my biases next, Sean, then we'll see what
Yep.
for you. But for me, I share the same thing with Ed about the three dice. Something about it bothers me, and like when they remove that part of a rules reference guide and change it to this is how you do first player, then that might ease it, and it might, you know what I mean. Over time, this will go away.
yeah.
It, but I did have the instant thing of like, and mine's really really soppy, like, and again, I know that I'm wrong, so it's okay.
Yep.
But
I'm
to
right there with
me,
you.
when I sit down for a game of X-Wing, that dice roll is what initiates the conversation, and it's me and my opponent working together to play the game and get
Mm,
the game set up.
Yep.
So, like, do you want to roll? Shall I roll? I'm asking you questions. We're
yeah.
engaging and talking and working together to get this done so we can play a game together.
Right.
Whereas in what we have now is I want to beat you in the roll. Right away, we're against each other from the outset now.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, because it
Yeah,
already starts off. It kicks off
yeah,
that competition right
yeah,
away.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I'm wrong because of the reasons we've said, but you know what I mean. That's how I feel about it,
Mhm.
and I'm entitled to my feelings, and it's okay.
You are absolutely 100%. It'll be okay. We'll get through it.
Yeah. No, and I don't really mind. Um, and it's weird because like I agree that rolling dice is fun. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's the flip side of the argument is, and I've had this discussion with other people, and it's like if you roll a dice and I call it, like remember when I had the game where I thought the guy was flopping the dice,
Yes.
right? So
Vividly.
yeah, so if you roll and I call it, and I get it wrong, like 11 times out of 13 rolls because turn 0 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, what through to 12. Do you think that's going to feel good? Do,
Yeah.
but now, do I start questioning your rolls? Do I just feel bad because I just guessed wrong and it frustrates me because it's a 50-50? Why can't I guess right at least once?
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
in
That's where I was.
having the inanimate objects rolling against it, does that make any sense? Like
A hundred percent. A hundred
I can
percent.
blame the dice, and blaming the dice is better than me blaming you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's
So
not your fault that you rolled that over there. That's what the dice came up on your side. It's
yeah,
definitely the dice's fault for this.
yeah.
It's the
So this,
one time that we're literally allowed to blame the dice.
yeah. But
Because there's nothing I can do to influence that in any way, shape, or form. It has nothing to do with the way I'm flying. Has nothing to do with which way I'm picking my positions. It's 100%.
oh,
I can absolutely blame the dice for this.
and I mean the turn order becomes this entirely separate thing that is what's the word, neutral.
Yeah.
Like if you can no longer think of moving first or second as an advantage. So that's what this comes from my biases as well. But
Yeah.
I'd no longer view having first or second player as an advantage in 99% of the interactions because I don't know which one it's going to be. So I can't plan because if I dial in the perfect move to give me the range of options and then have to move first, is it still a perfect move?
Yeah, that raises that
And
question. Like, I'm curious if we've poisoned the well a little bit on the game that Sean and I plays, where we both all played the exact same initiative. I think so we agree. There's no reason to play the game where nobody has a matching initiative because the game quite literally doesn't change. So I
yeah,
think that we can actually set that
yeah,
subset.
like when we get into it. But yeah, I mean, so I
What I
suppose
what I'd like to do.
I'll finish off my.
Oh, sure, go
Sorry,
ahead.
we're doing what we always do and
Of
getting
course.
sidetracked. But yeah, my outside of those two things, the fact it feels weird that you roll for setup and then not again until turn 2,
Mm-hmm. Which I
and the
agree with.
fact that it's 3 dice, I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the unknown because it's unknown, and I feel like it'll challenge me more. And that's not to say that I think I'm a brilliant player, but you guys have heard me talk enough now about like flying Vader and a defender. Like, yeah, I'll Vader and a defender when I fly him will die. That's because I opt into a playstyle which will allow him to get shot because I want to engage and play the game. I'm playing the game. I am playing the current iteration of X-Wing incorrectly if I want to maximize my chance to win, but I'm playing it in a way to maximize the amount of fun that I have whilst playing.
Right.
Mhm.
So, whilst I don't know, it's really hard to say it without sounding arrogant, if that makes sense. But ultimately, being initiative 6 isn't a skill. Spending one less point than my opponent isn't a skill. Being able to look at where the things are on the board,
Yeah.
understand what moves they have. No, but so what I mean is, X-wing ships move on rails. They're all on train tracks. They can only be in set positions. Knowing that if I put my set position in the point where I have the most options to avoid your set positions is a skill,
It is.
but how valuable of a skill should that be?
This gets into the
Because no matter how skillful you are, you cannot stop me.
yeah.
Like
This
me,
gets into the conversation that you and I had on Facebook when we were talking about this. This brings back a skill to the game that has been long lost from the game, which was people who knew how to fly.
but it's not even that. It to me, it's more of I don't consider it randomness. I think that's the wrong term. It's more unknown. Like remember when you first started playing X-wing
Exactly where
and
I was going to go.
you had no idea where the ships would be. Like so now you know theoretically this might open eyes. I don't know, but if you've got your ship and their ship is in your arc at range 1, in the center. If you've got them in bullseye at range 1 and they're facing away from you, there is no move that they can dial in that will get them out of your arc.
Yeah, but you didn't know that when you started playing the game.
Yeah,
And it
like
was always that great mystery of like, ooh, if they go left, I've got to
yeah,
kind of go with them. But if I guess wrong and they go right, I don't have a shot. It was like the whole dogfighting thing. It's
yeah,
like two
but
planes in the sky. I
yeah,
love that.
but all like if I dial in any bank, I stay within my firing arc. Bank moves don't leave their firing arc, so that means that if you're facing a rock and want to know if you can bank round it or not, is the rock in your firing arc or is it out of your firing arc? So when people take these target locks and go, oh man, I'm out of range, but they're checking along the line of the arc, that isn't to try and get a target lock. That's to check for certain if they can make this bank. So when you then see the picture of the ship, literally like a hair's breadth away from the asteroid, that wasn't skill. That's understanding the basic fundamentals of the game and how it works.
Yeah, where the ship's going to land when I put it on this. Absolutely. 100%.
The thing I bring this back to the most is guess range weaponry in Warhammer.
Ooh,
Like
that's been a while.
no, I know, but
I
it's
had a
been
good I
it's
was
been
good
gone
at that
for
back in those days.
were you good at it, or did you understand that you were playing on a 48-inch board
Yes.
that they set up 12 inches on and then moved 6 inches?
Yeah, you just did the
So
math. It's like
were you good at it? Was that a skill, or was that you understanding the fundamental principle of the game?
either way. I think it's a skill because I don't think everyone has it.
But that's like saying not everyone. I mean, is learning to.
Basic math, isn't that math
Yeah,
skills
yeah,
though?
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
not everyone
like
can do the math in their
no,
head.
but like, is reading a skill then?
I mean, I suppose.
Can you be better at reading than other people once they've got the fact that they can read?
You can be
Can you
faster
read?
at it. I don't know about better.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
There's a floor, but once you hit that floor, the floor also happens with a ceiling.
yeah. I agree. I agree. I agree.
Like, and it's
It's a
this is
skill while you're learning
this
it,
is
but once
going to
you
sound more punishing and harsh, and I intend it to. I don't know another way of phrasing it, but having that kind of stuff in the game is just gatekeeping. Like,
yeah.
I can play, and I'll keep using Warhammer because I don't want it to be too targeted.
Mm-hmm.
But when I play my Empire army that had 2 cannons and 2 mortars, like, oh man, I get really good efficiency out of these because they seem to like hit every time.
Because I'm good at counting.
Well, not even that. It's like, oh, this turn I'm gonna fire this cannon. Okay, I'm gonna guess what. So I set up 12 inches on. You set up 12 inches on. You marched 8 inches. So then I need the fact that the cannon's gonna add between 2 and 10, and then add again between 2 and 10. So I'll guess 16 inches,
Oh, look at that.
and then oh yeah, right. But even better, I've measured that cannon now. So now I'll fire a cannon that's next to it. And I'm still guessing, by the way. Oh man, I think I need to guess 16.75 inches now. You fucking Americans. Fucking points half 0.75 of an inch. Fuck you.
16 and 3/4.
Yeah. Thank you. But uh, and then, oh look, my mortars. Oh well, these are on the opposite side of the battlefield, so I can't use that information because trigonometry doesn't exist. I don't know that I set them up 24 inches away from my cannons, and that cannon was exactly this far away. I'm so skilled at the game, and like the person who's never played before is looking at these mortars landing slap bang in the middle of their units and going, "Holy shit! Like this guy's really good." Like, am I though?
Am I, or can I just do basic math?
Like I've got to a point where I understand that that 24 minus 8 is 16. Like, that's how
Right?
skilled I am. You know what I mean? Um, it is a skill that's floor is level with the ceiling, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes, I would agree with
And that's how I feel about double reposition aces.
that.
At initiative 6
I was gonna
with
say
a
add
bid.
initiative 6 as the second player.
Yeah. And I'm bad at it because I succumb to the urge to have fun and play the game. And that is my failing, and I will lose many a game of X-Wing because of it. And you know what?
well, isn't that the difference though? Is playing for fun or playing to win?
Yep. I would
Now,
agree.
well, no. I mean, now if you're a person that plays to win to have fun, that's a different type of person than a person playing to have fun or playing to win. Because there's a gratification piece that comes from winning to that person compared to me. I just want to play the game. If I play the game, I don't really care. I get frustrated in the game, just like you do with anything, not totally because I want to win, but because you do everything correctly and it doesn't work out because of an element. It's just like flying over a rock. You put the mustache rock down, how many times do you get bit by the
God.
mustache rock? You
Oh
know?
god. Or how many times you forget it's there and you're like, oh yeah,
I
I'm gonna
I
make that. I'm gonna totally make that.
I was playing a game with Chris Allen and Jeremy Jambalaya was on TGS watching us, and it was like my favorite part of this game is how Chris has put his YV666 in a position where it can't help but land not like do nothing for next turn. And so I looked, it's like, okay, let me change my camera angle, and yeah, it looks like you're right. Yeah, I land on the mustache rock and regret my life choices.
Yeah, I mean that's one part of it, but at the same time, you know, if you're the one that put the mustache rock there,
I was,
Oh,
well, you
always.
can, you know,
I
Absolutely.
did,
and
Sean. It was all me. Yeah,
that's
it
usually how it works.
it
Is
was all me.
yeah,
That's the best way for it to work. All right.
exactly.
So I
I
think
mean,
Chris and I have talked about our biases, Sean. I'm really kind of curious to hear what yours are going into this.
So I have a little different point of view on this. I've been disconnected from the physical game for a long time, so I don't come into it with much in the way of bias. So remember, I used to be a TO. So my whole philosophy about X-Wing has always been you print the rule, I enforce the rule because that's what a TO does. You know, a TO looks at rules, should look at rules and not put their own personal bias into rules. And that's my personal opinion about being a TO. Now, if I'm running an event where I can put any rule into it, then it's a whole different ballgame. But with this, the only thing that I have any issues with so far is what we've already discussed, and that's the first turn determining first turn all the way through to dials on second turn.
Yeah,
I think that that's a bad thing. I think what it should be is it that first roll ends after placement
yeah,
I agree.
because that would make the whole game end up being 100% exact, you know, where everything is random then from that point on, you know, rather than because it also creates an interesting part of the game where you could be the first player placing the first rock and placing everything, you know, placing your ships and not being first player, which would be that would create an interesting element to me because does that change how you place your rock? Does that change how what your strategy is in turn zero? Because ultimately, if you know that as soon as you win it and you know that you're going to be first player all the way through turn one, you have an advantage just like you did before, you know, in everything because you're now going to place rocks where they're going to be should be at an advantage
yeah,
because you know you're going first. And if you're playing a high aces list, you're really going to want to play that game because after that turn, you don't know what's going on. You know,
yeah,
you don't know where you're going to be. So that initial planning shouldn't be planning all the way through,
yeah. And
all the way through.
I'll counter my own point and say that it's only one round, and theoretically you can play around it. And on average, engagement doesn't start until turn three. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Like the fact that I saw the not the Matrix mate again is a little bit overly. It's not difficult. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, the fact that I spotted it and was like, oh, I could probably exploit this because I've been exploiting it for the last like 20 games or whatever.
Right.
That's one side of it, but how much impact it actually has, I don't know. But the fact that it can have any is the issue.
Right. Right. But beyond that, I don't have much to say because I haven't seen enough games played with it with new rules. When we start incorporating everything else that's coming up, that to me it will have more of an impact on the game than who's going first each turn, except for as I stated earlier, in mirror matches or in matches where ship initiative is the same.
Yeah.
After that, it doesn't matter because you're playing X-wing in between all of that. It's just like when we played Chris, we played X-wing in between all the other stuff that was going on.
Yeah, and I think we could probably move on to those now. Do you want to talk about the games first, and then our feelings about the games and our feelings on how it went? Because I think I want to close out with your thoughts, Sean, on how you built the list. It feels a bit out of
Gotcha.
us about face doing that last, but I think it'll make sense if we build up to that. If that,
Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good way to do it. So yeah,
yeah,
let's go on to the next.
yeah. So, well, I'll just start off because I played a game like 5 days before. I managed to get a game in on the Friday against someone and had overlap, so we used it all. So that was me playing Vader and the Inquisitors against Anakin and some Jedi. So the only overlap was at I6 with my Vader and his Anakin, but he had battle meditation on Anakin, which meant that he could coordinate to two Jedi after Vader had moved if he was second player. Which means that if he's saved the reposition, they can barrel roll to get a shot or boost to get a shot. So I was like, this could be really interesting. And I don't know that Clay had the same thoughts. He was using it a lot to get target locks after at Initiative 6, which again is still an advantage kind of thing. But um, I kind of didn't really worry about it. There was one turn where I'd we'd had a bit of a skirmish. His ships were all collapsing. I'd got my one of my Inquisitors behind, and then Vader's approach is it's Vader and Defender, so kind of I think we spoke about fell in the same kind of terms a long time ago. But like he needs to punch through the engagement and be clear on the other side.
We have talked about this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, I could three bank and have a good shot if I'm if I was first, I would have 100% of three banked. If I was second, I was contemplating doing either the two straight or a one bank and not getting my token. But then he, if I was first and did that, he can reposition everyone onto me, and I don't have my defensive tokens. So because there was such a big difference between that three bank and that one bank, I just did the five straight. I was like, I don't know what to do this turn, but I 100% know that no matter if he moves first or I move first, he cannot stop me from this five straight fitting, which means I get my evade. I can then reposition depending on what else has happened, or focus stack for the tokens. So out of the entire, I think we played 11 turns before the game ended in total destruction. Um, I lost. I turned Vader in to be range one of the Jedi. Um, I did a one bank to be range one of the Jedi, so we could just trade shots and see who won at the end instead of doing a five straight boost behind the clouds. Which, you know what I mean. If I'd have been playing to run away, Clay's convinced that I would have won. But I just told him that I don't want to play to run away, so he can win. It's fine. Um, but yeah, in an entire 11 round game, there was one turn where I did a move that was only that because I didn't know.
Yeah, and I'm curious about that because I'm thinking back to Sean and I's game. Let's just say, for sake of argument, I get out of that engagement. I only lose one ship. The swarm then breaks up, and then all of those overlapping turns don't really affect everything. So, legitimately, I feel like the only areas where this affects the game is on close engagements.
Yep.
Yeah,
Close
And
enough
and
where, yeah, close enough where blocks could happen.
well, I look at it this way: it's close enough where blocks or reposition.
Right.
yeah.
And that's the key to me, is understanding that your opponent can reposition. I think that that's the key piece in that, is that, but I also think that it's really only effective when you're having to choose between, as in our case, pilot skill 4 and pilot skill 4.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Because if it's a pilot skill 1, he's going to move, right?
yeah.
You
And like,
know,
like in our game, Sean, I think we were talking through our turns as we were doing it as well.
correct.
And again, I think there was like maybe in the turn I had to break up the swarm. I think there was one of them where I did like the straight so that I could barrel roll, because I either knew that I'd not be able to barrel roll because I'd have you in the shot, but or be able to barrel roll and probably block what I thought you were going to do. And then everyone else, it was like, well, this is where I want to be, whether I'm first or second, and I don't
Right.
care if you block it or not, because it's still a better position for me.
Correct.
But
Correct. And as we get into the future, a lot of what we did will change how you do things.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
in our game, Ed, I wouldn't, if the future rules that are potentially going to come in happen,
Yeah,
that changes how I play that entire game.
I
yeah.
agree.
The focus on bumps bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yes.
do you wanna touch on that real quick and see, and so we can,
Yes.
because these haven't been put in place as the things that they're discussing.
But it's
It came up in the stream. We
yeah,
talked
it
about it.
sounds like they're happy with the way that random order after dials works.
Right.
They're happy with the way deficit scoring's working. They're happy with the way the ban list is working, but they're not currently happy with how bumps work. And
I feel like we need to double back on that ban list real quick, because there were certain things, like, because we had talked about how the dial should be sacred. So there are
yeah,
current upgrades right now in the game that allow you to see a ship's dial, and those types of upgrades are going to go away.
yeah. So like they said, anything that's got a cost might stay restricted, but again, they're basically going to be testing it all to get it where they want it.
Mhm.
But like effectively, Sense, Cassian, Snoke, um, Informant, um, I'm sure there's others, but that basically that kind of stuff. The only one that I think's a little bit weird, I don't know that I like the idea of the i5 Tri Fighters going on the ban list, because they have the
Ooh.
if you spend a lock you have on a ship in the system phase, you can look at its dial. And I'm like, oh man, I hate to I lose my i5 Tri Fighters. And again, that's just because I'm currently playing them, so big sad for me. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
They might
Um,
FAQ or errata those to do something else then.
yeah,
But you're right. Like, so the if we're going off the premise of the dial is sacred, you should not know the dial until after it's been flipped, then those types of upgrades are probably going to be on the first list. This also included Luke Gunner,
yeah,
which, and we talked about this. This is a ballsy move to take a Star Wars game with Luke Skywalker and say Luke Skywalker is on the ban list, the Gunner anyway,
yeah.
simply because it completely eliminates that entire part of the game. If Luke can just go Ollie Ollie Oxenfree, just turn it and go.
As long as you don't put Vader and a Defender on the ban list, I'll be okay.
So there.
Um,
So those are the
yeah,
things we know for starters. We're talking about doing in the ban list. They are talking about doing a banned and restricted list. I am kind of curious to see how things go on that. They also briefly mentioned that the format of extended and hyperspace is basically going away. They're going to do a standard, and then the extended is going to be Ollie Ollie
yeah.
Oxenfree,
I
like
mean,
no bans, no
so
restrictions.
what I should say, because this will be save Ed a bunch of time. If you want to hear about all of this, go and check out either Dice 8 Patreon or the Lack of Focus Patreon, because we have an in focus breaking down the AMG stream, which by the time you hear this will be available to the public. It's currently Patreon only, but that was uploaded this morning, so people can be listening to that now. Their Patreons, but that'll go live on Tuesday. So yeah, the same time this comes live, you should be able to listen to that. And at some point, it'll get fed into the stream normally, so it'll appear probably a week later than that on your normal download thing. So if you can't even be bothered googling Lack of Focus Patreon, then or clicking the link in the show notes. But we do have a 51-minute in focus episode breaking all of that down.
Correct. I just figured, since in case they didn't hear that, I would at least wanted to touch on those two.
Yeah, I know. It's just, even though clocks go back tonight, I want to enjoy that extra hour sleep.
Me too. Me too.
So, rolling it back to my one game with Vader, I actually enjoyed that as a choice. That enhanced the game for me, I'm not going to lie. Having that point where I was like, the best move for this is different to the best move if I knew either way. Like, if I knew I was going first, the best move is X. If I knew I was going second, the best move is Y. Because I don't know, my best move is actually Z. And I enjoyed that thought process that got me there. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like, did anyone else have any of those moments?
I had a lot of the moments. So I went with the blunt force trauma approach on my first game doing that, where I'm gambling, I'm going to win this. If I don't, I'm going to.
Yeah, you were pushing all of the chips in on one or the other a lot, weren't you?
Right, just to see what would happen. And what I can tell you from one game of experience doing it, that is the wrong approach. Which means you definitely need to start getting into the 4D level of, 4D chess kind of level of, I really need to think about these moves, especially when they come into close exam. Now, admittedly, Sean and I had a very extreme case where there were 6 ships on the board, all of them were I4, so that roll was extraordinarily important.
And the actual initiative didn't change throughout like the entire game. It felt like you guys did it.
It did for 2 turns total.
Yeah.
2 inconsequential turns, I might add.
Yeah, but
when it came down to the important ones, Sean always won.
But those it was 2 back to back, then it flipped and stayed that way.
Yep.
And
it was 1 and 2, and then everything else was, and we played 6 rounds total.
Yeah. So what I would say, I do have a question, Ed, which I want you to try and consider.
No, of course.
If you'd have gone all in on one or the other and been right,
I would have felt the exact same way I do right now.
Right. Because if you go all in and shit roll your opponent, I'm sure that will feel really good.
But it came down to luck of a dice roll at that time.
This is where I think, this is the exact conversation that we had about my game with Sean, but different. The fact that I hung Vader out to dry, got him down to 1 health, and then lived the rest of the game. Just because I did that doesn't mean not doing the 5 straight was the correct decision.
Yeah.
If I'd have done the 5 straight, Vader's still above half points, and I can play a lot more aggressively with him. Sean's got 2 different angles of approach to worry about. That was the correct choice. Just because the outcome was correct, or just because I got a desired outcome, doesn't mean that the choices that got me there were correct.
Yeah.
Like the old show your work kind of thing. Going all in on, I'm going to bet all of my money on red, spin that fucking wheel. Just because it comes up red every once in a while.
I mean, it was the right choice.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
And I think that's even. This is going to sound really weird, but I think, and this is feelings, not actually thought out, done any math here, so please just destroy me when I'm completely wrong. But I feel like if you go all in on a turn where it's going to actually be crucial, that isn't going all in on black or going in all in on red. That's like going all in on like the top, a quadrant, or like going
Right.
all in on zero,
Right.
because you're not. It's
That
not
that's
an
if
a
we're
nice.
gonna keep the if we're gonna keep the gambling, it's going all in on pocket aces before the flop.
Yeah, it's going all in before the flop. Like,
Yep, it's I'm either winning this or I'm losing this on these pocket aces.
yeah,
I mean, at that point, you think you have the best hand because you have pocket aces.
yeah.
And you
Before the
don't know
flop,
what those other two
before the
cards are.
flop, right?
When it flops 3 2s and your opponent's holding 2-7,
Yep, you're fucked.
Yes.
and
So
because they obviously went all in on their 2-7 against your pocket aces.
Mhm.
Well, that and if you go with true gambling, you didn't do enough to bet them out, is why you lost.
Yeah,
And that's the thing with X-Wing's kind of the same way, where your list is your hand, and how you set your list up is what's in your hand, and then how you play it after that is where you're playing to the river. And it's like I knew I had Ed the moment he turned. I knew that it was my game. Because of my list, I knew it was my game. If I could have killed Vader when I should have killed Vader, I think it was my game with Chris. Now, we played to time. We got 6 rounds with 5 minutes left when we ended.
well,
We
like,
would have had one more.
I only won because I still had Vader's points on the table.
Correct. And
Yeah,
that's the
so,
only reason why. Yep.
yeah.
But
Like,
at the
I
same
knew the ties would, and that was my plan all along, was to keep Vader on the table, and the ties will eventually do damage because that's what they do when they all get to work together.
right.
The fact that it worked doesn't mean that I played better than you. It means
Correct.
that like I said, I got there through the wrong choices. But
Well, yeah, it was kind of a backwards way to do it, but that's kind of how gambling in
yeah.
X-Wing is if I kill Vader, because in an hour and 15-minute game with a 12-round limit, and what's the average rounds in a game now? 6, I think.
But
5
you're
or
still
6.
sitting around 10. Like, I
Well,
think
it all depends how fast people play.
yeah.
Yeah.
If people are throwing dials quick, I could see 10. If people are having to make choices, which I would think you would do, 6 to 8 is probably what you're going to get. And
Yeah.
in a 6, we'd have been had 7 rounds. Ed and I had 6.
We had like about
I
15
think
minutes
it's
left.
still worth remembering that we're like I'm nowhere near experienced on TTS yet, and I'm trying to teach for 2 of you.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of
it's a
that
blind
too.
leading the blind on that.
But I
side.
will say, Chris, your game and my game was quick dial setting.
Yeah.
We didn't have. I think I had one turn where I took 30 seconds to a minute to set, because with my list, I know what I'm going to do ahead of time. I just have to decide. The 2 decisions I have to make are, when am I going to action,
Yeah.
and
Are you
it'll
going to do a
be
move that's on your dial?
that is correct.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 choices that I have, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about that when I go over my list.
Yeah. And I heard this phrase the other day. I can't remember what. Well, it might have been listening to D and Ryan arguing about the same topic we're talking about now. But I think it's like everyone thinks they're fast at setting dials until they come up against someone faster. And it's like I think I set dials pretty quick generally. I think my
I
dials are
do.
generally
I
fine.
know that I do. I just know historically I always did, because I had while everything else is going. 'Cause I used to play chess, so in chess you're always thinking ahead.
You mean
And
first
once,
edition X-Wing? Is that what you mean by chess?
yes, first edition X-Wing.
Getting digs in there for everyone who thinks X-Wing is an actual balanced game. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But the key thing to me is that I'm already thinking, while we're throwing dice
Sorry,
at each
I need to
other.
interject, Sean. Sorry, but I'm going to roll that back. I'm just getting that dig in for everyone who thinks chess is a balanced game.
Right. Because it's not.
Because it's
Well,
not.
it's not, because there's still a first player and there's still a second player.
Yeah, chess is not a balanced game.
White, if you play chess, white should always have the advantage.
So
That's what tournaments always do.
It's dictating the game.
Yes.
That's what white does. White dictates the game, and white should always have the advantage. It doesn't mean the white player plays perfectly, but the white player should have the advantage. And that's the key in X-wing is, I think the players that know their list and know what they want to do with their list have a great advantage over somebody who's building a list either because they saw it on the internet, or they saw it, or they thought, oh, this might work, but they don't understand interaction, and they don't understand the interaction against other lists or other types of lists. Then that's where you have all the problems. Within our games are in a vacuum because
Yeah.
our games were built specifically to try one thing out.
Yeah.
So our two games exist in that vacuum of testing one element. And then we tested it, at least in my opinion, I think we tested it enough to understand the effect of that element on the game in that vacuum
Yeah.
style game that element's going to affect.
All right, so I suppose let's do takeaways that we had from it then, and then we'll move on to list building.
Sure.
Yep.
So I only got the one game in myself. My takeaway from that is that the blunt force trauma, brute force attempt of red or black betting on it is not going. I mean, you're going to either win or you're going to lose poorly uh, playing it that way. So what it does is it's going to, even on your opening moves, like everyone thinks, okay, with those two first couple of moves, maybe they're inconsequential because it doesn't really matter. I don't know that I agree with that. I think it's genuinely going to become a much more, if it's even harder to get even further into the game's really going to come a lot more into positioning and your level of accountability when you start getting into those engagement rates. Knowing, okay, I need to be able to account for, like Chris was saying, they're on railroad tracks. Where is he going to be, and where possibilities, and where can I slide my ship in to be able to get those shots in? It's going to take some thought on those engagement rounds. When you have a situation like we had, where you have, even if it's just two ships, even if it's two ships as they're coming in, that could be the make or break because it's going to affect everything that comes before and after that and how you're setting those up. It's just going to take a little bit more thought. I don't think that it is the end all and be all. The sky is falling. I think people are going to adjust, and I think we're going to discuss how they're going to adjust. I think, look, everything else, good players are going to find ways to eliminate as much variance as possible in a game, and whether that be through the same methods that they always have, it's going to be through list building. I think you're going to need, when you are putting your list together, you're going to want to take into account of, well, what happens if this situation happens? How do I react?
Well, and I think to expand on that, Ed, is as a player, you have to be open minded to the things that you don't preconceive are going to happen in your game.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people play a game thinking that something is going to happen in a certain way. And that's where I think a lot of the frustration, or whatever you want to call it, with these new rules coming out, are people are frustrated because it's taking them out of their element that they've always thought in. Now they have to think differently. And people hate change, right off the bat. Chris said this, people hate change. That's number one.
Hmm.
And you're definitely correct. It's There's going to have to be more thought put into X-Wing now than there was maybe at the end of 1.0 and through all of extended up to this point.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, as kind of a defense for these people, like playing devil's advocate, like people feel like they are being told that they're playing the game wrong, and that it's easy to interpret that as a personal attack. And I don't think that that's the case. I don't like when they say that these changes aren't for you and they're sorry. They understand that the game that exists currently that FFG handed to them was fine. It was a game in its own right. But if they're going to continue working on it, they have to make it into a game that they can jive with. And if that isn't what they see for the game, you Like, you don't. This is probably not a valid comparison, so sorry. But it's like, if you're left-handed, do you want left-handed people designing tools for left-handed people to use, or do you want someone who's right-handed trying to come up with stuff?
Yeah, no, I trust
Like,
me. I work in an industry where people who design the rules that affect my work life have no idea what my work life is. You know,
yeah.
I
Yes.
get that totally.
But like, I mean, direct. Like, try if you're left-handed, try and if you're right-handed, try and use the can opener left-handed. Like when I was in the military, the SA-80 that we used to use for our rifle is right-handed. If you're left-handed, you have to learn to shoot it right-handed.
Right.
Whereas
Ooh.
in the M16 is ambidextrous. You can set it to
Sort of,
eject.
sort of,
Yeah,
sort of, sort
you
of.
can
It's
shoot it left-handed.
you can, but everything is still opposite. If you're shooting the left-handed, your forward assist is still on the right. It's still
All right,
on your trigger side at that point, whereas you're having to change how you mechanically do
but
things.
it's it eject the carts out of the correct side
It's
though.
it's the right side.
All
So,
right.
and I don't know
No,
what the correct side is.
as in away from your face. If you were,
Yes, it would. Yeah,
yeah,
if you're left-handed, it ejects them towards you.
yeah. So no, but there are guns that are left-handed where it's in you. It'll you can set it up to eject
Hmm.
out of the other side, kind of thing.
Right.
Because spent casings are hot.
Yes.
Um,
Especially
Very
when they
hot.
hit you in the face
it's almost like there was a miniature explosion inside this piece of thin metal.
milliseconds ago.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I mean, this is tangents within tangents now. But like, you don't want someone who has no idea about that mentality to be doing it. And that's not to say that AMG couldn't and that they'd do it badly, but I would much rather have them work in an environment that they're comfortable taking the game to where they want it to be
Yep.
than trying to make something that they're not passionate about or going through emotions kind of thing.
Yeah, because again, I think I'm stealing some thunder from the lack of focus or the in focus that we did. I AMG could just as easily had walked in the door and said, "We're keeping the status quo. We're going to do points adjustments 2 to 3 times a year. We're going to continue with our release schedule. We're still going to play in the same playgrounds we're doing with skills and abilities, and not changed these fundamental rules." And they probably would have been fine.
Well,
I do respect. I think what we would have ended up with, though, I think this is probably what Sean's going to speak up on. We probably would have ended up with where we were at the end of 1.0 eventually.
I I'll let Sean come in a second, sorry, but I think that where we would have ended up is with a dead game.
Yes, exactly. And I don't think that people totally realize that. You know, number one, the way that things work in life is if you have the same people doing the same thing over and over and over, they do the same thing over and over and over. That's just the way that it is. Even if you try to change how you model something, it still does that, because people, groupthink is a very real thing, and you get into that single track. My point is, and I think a lot of the frustration with AMG is the fact that it's not Alex Davey making the game. It's not Frank Brooks making the game. It's not any other Frank that they had assigned to the game.
Like,
And you know what? That's not AMG's fault.
like
And
I'm
I've
gonna
seen that. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because I saw that post. I saw a post on Facebook talking about that. Where somebody who was close to all the designers, the former designers, brought up a post, of, you know, toast a drink to, these people. And it's
look,
like,
I will say that the the people toasting. I'm not gonna dig up old posts or anything like that, but there, I think it would be fair to say that a large number of the people who are criticizing AMG and who are lamenting the loss of FFG are the same people who were saying that it's time to fire Max when he was doing stuff and he was a new person because they didn't like the things that they thought he did. When it turned out that the things they did like were things he did, but
Mhm.
they didn't care about facts. It was just about feelings, and they thought it was time to fire Max.
Yeah, and
So
I think that that's what it comes down to is we're at an emotion, the stages of grief at this point, like you
yeah,
said, and we're at that point where we've already been through bargaining.
yeah,
Well, and I think those people have very short-term memories in the fact of some of the things that FFD changed that they didn't like,
Well,
and they didn't go over very well.
so last night late, if I can find it. Where did I send it?
I think you sent
It was
either
it was
Discord
after
or
min.
Facebook.
No, it was Facebook.
Yeah.
So
So while you're looking that up, I do want to real
Yeah.
quick. I have a
here we
huge.
go. Here we go. Okay, let me go through this real quick. Sorry, Ed.
Oh, go ahead.
So I sent this at near midnight last night, but this was in after me reading another freaking post, which I got to stop doing. But I wrote, I mean, we survived MOV. Do you remember the transition to MOV and how much people thought that would ruin the game? We
Yeah.
survived. We survived Roanoke.
Yep.
Remember how much people said that would ruin the game? What they did? We survived Phantoms because that was the worst ship put in the game at the time. We survived Dangaroo, which was the worst combination you could have put in the game. And I put we can survive Road. I mean, that's what's going to happen is the game's still going to continue. I haven't seen the people who are talking about selling out their lists. I haven't seen them on eBay yet. So I'm guessing those people still have their ships and are going to keep their ships.
So what I was going to say is I have a huge amount of respect for Alex, Frank,
Yep.
all the former FFG employees. We were all personal friends with those folks. Like legitimately connections on Facebooks, chatted with them all the time, talked to Wade and a bunch of the other guys that were still running OP back in those time. This is not a knock on them in any way, shape, or form. It's not. They the game started wave 1 to wave 3. Alex took over from wave 4 on, brought Frank on, and the game went from all the way there into like I think they did a fantastic job and brought the game to where it was. There's a huge amount of respect I have for all of those folks. But in order for a game to survive, it needs to change. You need to find the things that are not working correctly and adjust. I applaud AMG for their approach of just flipping some of the switches and see what kind of happens. They're not doing this in a vacuum. They are testing these things and they believe this to be the correct direction for the game. I recognize the resistance to change. I personally do not believe that you're playing the game incorrectly when you're like, I used to like it better when that was that way. Well, I used to like the game better when Ty Swarm used to win games all the time. Guess what?
I used to like the game better when I could put Veteran Instincts on Whisper and then Decloak on my activation
An advanced cooking
and
device
then
and reclock.
recloak after I fired.
Yep, I used to like
Yep.
that too. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I used to like being able to take 3 toilet seats, I'm sorry, Jumpmaster 5000s, and be able to load them up with torpedoes and blow every list off the board. I used to like that a lot. Was that the right thing for the game? No. Did it need to be adjusted? Yes. And I get it. This is a huge mechanical change and it's going to take some time to adjust, but you are going to adjust. I believe me, you will get through this.
And at the same time, you can lament your friends no longer work for a company, and
Yes,
that sucks.
it
And that
does.
sucks royally, but it wasn't their choice. It wasn't the choice of the current designers for all of this. I don't think the current designers knew it was happening before it happened. And if they did, they probably didn't know very far in advance.
Well, and they didn't know how far in advance, and they didn't have any choice in the matter.
Correct.
I mean, all of that aside, like I'm the the game the game was fun and the
Yeah,
game will still be fun.
yeah. I'm
Exactly.
still
Like
pushing plastic spaceships and making pew pew
yeah.
noises. in the Star Wars universe. Like it's still going to be a fun game.
Right.
Yeah. I think we've got like 15 minutes or so before we want to start closing
So
because
like,
I
yeah,
don't
let
get tired soon, fall off the cliff. The
yeah,
Obviously, for my list, I didn't really put any thought into road other than making sure I had I4s to match
same.
Sean. Ed was the same. So Sean was the only one of us who designed his list with road in mind. I would play this Vader list anyway. Ed,
It seemed fun,
yeah,
Chris. That list seemed like it'd be that synergy is so cool.
yeah. That's why I tried to find a list that I would have been happy playing before and play it in the test to see how I felt about it. And that's not to invalidate the way you approached it, because I think we get a lot more value from this conversation now than if we'd have all just taken a normal list and tried to match initiatives, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
the list I would have taken would have been the 4X1B list because I really want to try flying that list. But
Yeah,
when I recognized what we really wanted to try to do, which was stress test, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go with that and then raise the initiative. I'm like, all right, I've run out of points. Got some
yeah,
points left over. Let's toss, hopeful on all of these and then see what happens.
yeah,
So what I'll do is I'll talk through the list real quick. And the two ships are mirrored, so there's nothing too super different between them, and it's a list that had success in 1.0. So
It did.
it's not like this is anything brand new. It's just my thought process in how I built the list is specific to this condition that the game is in right now. So the list is IG88B and IG88C. They're mirrored, so everything I talk about will be the same on both ships. And I'm going to go through this specifically on purpose. So I took IG2000 so that they can mimic each other.
Yep.
One ability mimics the other. I took Shield Upgrade because I think that A, I had the points, and B, I think that that's going to be a big thing when you're looking at the new world. I've always believed in being an upgrade hull or upgrade shields. Is always just a good thing when you can afford to do it. Um,
And since you're going to 200 points now anyway, it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. And that's the other thing I took into consideration is I didn't want to have any points left over. I did. I was 199 points, but that's because of the way that it is. I took tractor beam and heavy laser cannon. Uh, I used to do that when I played these back in 1.0 because you're covering both range arcs and tractor beam can be very effective in the game. HLC is obvious because of the ability you shoot a main gun shot, strip tokens, or force them to take damage on that shot. If they don't take damage, you strip tokens and then HLC them. Um, and that's pretty much the concept of the offensive side of this ship is range 1 you still have tractor beam, range 2 to 3 you have HLC or tractor beam if you want to shoot it. Then I added proton bombs because, and Ed found this out very dearly,
Hmm.
if someone wants to joust this list, proton bombs are gigantic. I mean, they are there to me, and there's other ones out there that can do things, but for the points I had available, and I've always liked proton bombs. If you're playing against ships without shields, being able to toss, anytime you can toss um, crits on ships, I think that it's always advantageous. And then the two pieces, the first one is inertial dampeners. And in this day and age,
Mm.
especially in the joust, inertial dampeners actually becomes a thing. And because of road, it gives you the ability to choose to move or not to move if you choose that. Of course, you're going to take stress, but because of and the next one is advanced sensors. I see the field. I can choose then what I want to do action wise. So I can action before. If I know that I'm not going to be stressed, I can action after by choice. It all depends on how I want to do it. In the world of road, being able to take your actions. So if I can calculate prior to, get 2 calculate tokens on both ships if need be. I think that that's a great advantage, and advanced sensors really gives you that ability. And then finally, the elusive. I love elusive,
Mm,
um, because on this ship, I really think having the ability to reroll um, a defense die, is extremely important to me, because, and it did actually help me from taking damage against Ed, and I think against Chris too, if I'm not mistaken.
absolutely did.
And then, of course, it's rechargeable, which makes it multi-purpose. And with these ships, you're going to be doing a lot of red maneuvers, to reposition things like that, so it recharges. So using elusive never hurts, especially when you know you're going to do red maneuvers and be stressed and be able to recharge it. So between advanced sensors, inertial dampeners, and elusive, and then having the gun package of tractor beam and HLC, I just think that this, in the world of road, if I'm flying against a pseudo mirror, or if I'm flying against something like what we flew against where we have positioning issues, it would also help too if I know that I'm going up against someone who wants to block a lot. It's also very effective because I can then move into the block having already action. And to
And
me,
then
that's
the following turn, drop a bomb on them.
correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And then play the proton bomb. And with proton bombs having charges and being able to drop two, you can't beat. That's probably the highest to me in this list, probably one of the best 4 points I can spend.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
Your list came with a lot of tools in the toolbox. A
right.
lot of tools.
And you guys know me. I'm a player. I'm a person who likes to dumb down my list so that I have fewer choices. But I think with this list, it's almost like playing without choices. It's almost like playing an autopilot list, because once you get to know when are you going to use elusive, when are you going to use inertial dampeners, and how your salvo is, going to be on the offensive side, this ship gives me a lot of choices that are easy choices. If I know that I'm going to bump, guess what I'm going to do? I'm an advanced sensor. If I know that I'm going to be doing a red maneuver, I'm an advanced sensor. If I know that I can make it through my maneuver and be able to do a boost, gain the evade token, I'll do that too. But
Or, oh crap, I lost the roll. I guess I'll just inertial dampener and let them fly right in front of me.
exactly, or let them fly into me.
Right.
And that's the other side, because these are still medium based ships. And I think that having all of these tools that are really easy choice tools too, none of this was hard. Like I said earlier, I only had really one turn in both the games where I had to stop and think, what's my X or what's my Y? What's the cause and effect of the two things I can do here? And that was whether I was going to advance sensor or if I was going to inertial dampen. And that's really what it is. And this ship has enough mobility. And the beauty of these two ships is they can actually fight on their own. They don't both need to be in the same game space to be effective, because when you can throw 6 or 7 dice at range 1, 2, or 3 at ships. I mean, I
Yep.
don't know, or actually, it's actually 8 dice. If you're at range 1 between the two shots, I really think that you have a decent enough advantage. Now, once again, against um, hyper maneuvering, high pilot, higher pilot skill ships, this list will have the same disadvantages that it did in 1.0, where you'll be able to pick them apart. But with the proton bombs, it makes it a little more difficult for that player. And with the inertial dampeners, it'll make it difficult for that type of player to have all of that advantage, in my opinion. They have to take those things into consideration when they're doing their maneuvering. So getting in behind me, you're maybe not going to want to get in behind me at range one potentially.
Yeah.
And I am a player where I do run over rocks, and I'm not afraid of that. And I'm not afraid of putting a bomb down that will do damage to my own ship. I'm not afraid of that.
So I did have one feels question for you, Sean.
Hmm.
And like, there isn't a right or wrong answer. Um, do you think they should let you do those two upgrades? Speaking of the ban list,
Yeah,
like
for
they
advanced.
spoke about obviously stuff that lets you look at the other person's dial.
Hmm.
So like,
Ultimately, that's what I'm doing because I'm looking at game state.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's
After they flipped them, but yes.
well, even before, because you have to make these choices prior to. These are known battlefield condition choices. So if I believe that my moving, let's just say three straight, is going to bump me, well, I'm an advanced sensor. If I think that an opponent is going to do something that might put them in a position with me doing a full stop maneuver, I agree. And that's, I think advanced sensors will go up. I think we're going to see advanced sensors in the 20-point range.
I would agree with that same thing of the inertial dampeners too.
I
I
mean,
think inertia,
what do you
well,
think about? So obviously, we've shortened it to ban, but it's like ban restricted.
right.
So, do you just put advanced
Well,
sensors and inertial dampeners and that kind of stuff on the restricted half of the list? Do you think
you,
they should be banned? Like,
so I
do you
don't think
think that it's too like? Will it become that that's a what? Like, so let me frame the
well,
question better.
let
Sorry.
me, let me
Uh,
throw this
yeah.
before you ask that question. How many lists will this affect? Because it's only going to affect what, scum? So it's only going to be one faction.
No, loads of ships can take advanced sensors in the sensor slot, and a bunch can take illicits. Like
Okay.
the Falcons can have illicits.
Hmm.
Resistance can have illicits now.
But
Um,
but I think this is the combination of the two that I'm looking at.
yeah,
Because it's the combination of the two that really kind of break this combination. You know, um,
yeah,
and that's the question, Chris. Is I think before you ban it or before you restrict it, you point it first.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Be,
agree.
because if you put advanced sensors to 20, let's say, so let's say now I'm paying 40 points. Now I'm paying 163 points just on those alone.
yeah.
165 if I'm looking at IG 2000.
But do we not get into the same conversation we had about bids though? Because like
I Yes,
if
yes,
well, that's why I'm trying to frame the question. But like, if the
yeah.
people who were willing to give up 20 points to guarantee that they move first, would those same people not still be as willing to spend 20 points on this upgrade that effectively does the same thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it all depends. To me, it all depends. See, if I were to restrict it, it would be the two cards together. So you can't play advanced sensors and inertial dampeners on the same ship. That's how I would restrict it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to how specific they're going to get with their bans and restricted. Are they going to ban advanced sensors on pilot skills 4 and up, or are
Right.
they going to ban advanced or restrict advanced sensors to just one per squad? Like that's it really depends on how they flex those ban or restricted muscles on how they do it. If they get to that level of granularity, I agree. You're banning, you're restricting this to or banning this combination of two cards. They're not banning either card individually. They're banning them together as a group. Like that
Yeah,
would
you
be
would. You can restrict them. You can restrict them both individually, but you can ban them as a combination.
right. So you can have one of this and one of this, but not on the same ship. Yeah,
Correct.
I can see that.
But once again, you have to value what's the value of this ship combination or this ship. Is this and I understand where you're coming from, Chris, because you're talking about the dial being sacred. and I totally get that.
But it's more if the reasons for the change are to create this environment,
Right.
is stuff that goes half of the way towards recreating the previous environment.
Right.
Like,
Well, how far down that rabbit hole do you go though,
oh,
Chris? Like,
I don't
That
know.
was exactly my next question was
I don't
how
know.
deep does that rabbit hole go? Because this is a one-off style list, and it's best played against jousters. If somebody wants to joust me, I think I have a great advantage. If somebody wants to play me and try to fly me all over the board, I'm at a disadvantage, I think. And no matter what I do with advanced sensors or inertial dampeners, it really doesn't matter at that point. If I'm chasing ships or having to like if you would have done with Vader what you were talking about,
Yeah.
that changes our whole game because I have to either choose to approach the swarm or chase Vader. And if I chase Vader, I'm being shot at by 4 ships. If I go after the swarm, I'm being shot at by 4 ships and Vader. And really, this list is really good, I think, in a joust meta. If we were playing in a joust meta where people were going to come at me face to face, I would take that all day long, every day, because of the maneuverability of these ships or the choices that I could make. But I don't think this is a world's winning list, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But it's a list that's built with road in mind.
well,
So
as far as how deep that rabbit hole goes, I'm starting to think things
like
like, so do we ban phantoms, for example, because they do a decloak, knowing that they're whether they're going first or second, and then do you go, okay, well then if we're gonna ban them for that reason, what about any other ship that repositions? We've got ships that do barrel rolls and boosts, or like what am I thinking? I'm thinking like what's the strikers, for example, that get to do a pre-move before. Like, how
so I
far
think
down
the
that rabbit
best
hole do we go?
example I can think of is if dials are sacred, what do you do with Hera Syndulla in the VCX 100?
Yeah.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
she dials in a blue move and can change it.
Correct. In what
Yeah.
Boba Fett with the upgrade with the title can do the same thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. But
Yeah.
like
I mean,
it wasn't a question that I have an answer to. It was more of a
no, no, no,
Yeah.
talking
no,
No, no,
no.
points.
no.
Oh,
And I don't have an answer other than because this is something I thought about when I was building it is if this became a combination that could be utilized on multiple ships, then where does it go? Does do we hit a points creep on it? Forcing advanced sensors over 20. Do we? I don't know. It's because I don't know if AMG is going to do the same thing that Fantasy Flight did and try to adjust the game with points more so than all the other extraneous things that you can do. Because to me, it seemed like Fantasy Flight was trying to balance the game through points more so than restricting things. They put cards out with restrictions with those in mind. But I don't know if AMG will have that same path throughout and down that road. And if they don't, okay, you know, then if they're still doing it with points, then you're just going to balance it with points. But if you are going banned or restricted, then I think you put restrictions on both and ban the use together. That's the only thing whether
yeah.
that's right, whether that's correct or incorrect, that's the thing.
It'll be an interesting journey, to say the least. If
Right,
I had to
but
think,
like
my knee jerk reaction is going to be, it's going to be card combinations like that violate
the sacred trust with the dial.
right. I don't know that it's necessarily game mechanics. So, like, for example, while I did throw out there, like, oh, are you going to ban Phantoms because Phantoms can do a move after with perfect knowledge of whether or not they are going first or after going first before they decide to decloak. I don't think that's going to go. I don't think that they're going to ban repositioning ships that have the ability to do a boost and barrel roll kind of thing. I think what they will do though is they're going to do things like card upgrades that allow those. That's where you're going to start seeing those restrictions. Or maybe we'll, I mean, like, I don't know. Like that would be my knee jerk reaction, at least for the first wave of this. I can't possibly imagine them going into that route of banning specific ships out of the game because they have that ability to do so.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm interested to see which route they decide to go. Because I mean, this type of a list does create a quandary in the game.
It does.
But I don't think it's like I said, I don't think it's a top tier list. It'll be good against people that want to joust, no matter what the pilot skills are. If they want to joust you, I think it's an exceptional list, unless you're going up against 6 or 8 ships. Then it's a little more difficult.
What I think that list does is it shows where the game is gonna go. Maybe not necessarily with that specific list, but with that build mentality
Correct.
of I want to be able to put as many tools in the toolbox to be able to account for this should it arrive. It's not like it hurts the list because they still are good. You can pulling off an advanced sensors and then being able to do all your fun stuff would still be beneficial to you in the game, regardless of whether or not you and I are going on the same initiative. It just
Right.
also adds that little wrinkle of, oh, by the way, in the event that we are on the same initiative, this gives me another tool that you don't.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, I don't know. Like I say, I don't think. Again, this wasn't supposed to be an attack on Sean's list. I don't
Oh
think
no,
it
no,
came
no,
across
No,
like
no,
that.
no,
no,
no, no.
But
no.
You
it's
gotta
one of
remember.
those things of like, until all of these rules come together, it's
Right.
really hard. It's interesting to hear you talk about your thought process in putting this list together, and I think it's of value. The reason I asked the follow-up questions and got us to where we are now is because we don't know what the ban restricted list is. We don't know what the bumping stuff is. Like, if you can take a focus when you bump, do you need advanced sensors as much? Maybe the value of advanced sensors drops massively.
Drops quite a bit. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, it still lets you do a reposition, but now you don't get to do the follow-up actions, blah blah blah. So like,
Right.
I think uh, there's a bunch of brain activity, like fucking sparks and cogs turning, dust being blown off for everyone. But I think it's too early to make make that call yet. I think
Right.
and yeah, it's fun to make it because like now if that list wins world, Sean, you get to feel like a genius and the architect.
I only
But
feel like
if
a genius if it's me winning worlds with it.
but you know what I mean. But like
Yeah.
if
Yeah. No,
that
I get
list never gets played because it turns out it just doesn't work,
right.
it's irrelevant to the thought process now. If you know what I mean.
Right.
It's
Right.
interesting to start thinking about them, but don't commit too hard
Nope.
on this is what it's going to be and this is how the game's going to this is what the game's
Right.
going to look like because
But
honestly
and
we
remember
don't
when I
know.
talk. Remember when I talked to you guys about this, or when I posted it initially, I told you guys this was specifically for the current rule that's coming out, and that's it. That's the whole concept of this is for this rule. It doesn't take into effect. And here's the deal: if we do get bumping and people can still action, that changes that concept. Like Chris, you were saying,
Yeah.
that does change it. And I mentioned that earlier. Would I want to sit there and put myself into range 0 of ships? And have them be able to potentially push damage through, or
Yeah.
does that make this list viable at that point?
Yeah. And that's it. Like I suppose that's how I want to kind of close the segment, unless you've got anything else said.
Nope. Nope. I think
Yeah.
we've covered
But
a lot
just
of
that
ground.
the only takeaway you have after 2 and a bit hours of us jabbering on about this, like the 2.5 or whatever you want to call it, isn't finished yet.
Right.
So if you don't like how it currently sounds, maybe there's more. and maybe you're right, but I don't know that you actually gain anything by being right in this instance. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
Hmm.
I would, I would rather assume that it's all going to work out and enjoy the next. Obviously, we want to try and get it done by Christmas. Like the next 2 months, kind of thing.
Yep.
Like the next 8 weeks. God damn it! I'm gonna have to count now, aren't I?
Yeah, it's almost we're counting down to
No,
Christmas at this
not
point.
even
7 weeks.
8 weeks.
We're
7 weeks.
in that 7 week.
7. Yeah. You know what I mean? I would rather enjoy that time than get myself worked up about it because ultimately we don't know anything yet.
Nope.
Like this is from what a collective maybe 10 games experience under these changes. Like we don't know if you've played 20 games, you still don't know because we don't know what the other stuff does yet. Like I thought I was mega big brained when I just implemented random player order by roll a single dice, call it if you get it right, your first player for the entire game. And then it turns out that I was massively wrong on what random player order meant. You know what I mean? Like just try and enjoy the game while you can. And
Well, I just
I
appreciate the
was
fact the game still exists.
Yeah, at
uh,
this point, I agree.
I was gonna say be nice to each other, but like it's not even that. Like the people who listen to this is fucking irrelevant. But just scroll past.
Yep.
Yeah,
It does. I think that's just good advice for the world we currently live in. Just scroll past it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Nope. That's probably the best advice anybody can take right now.
Yeah. Unless it's me posting about Patreon, in which case you should definitely follow up on that. Click it.
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, that was everything I wanted to like hit. I think we've done a massively long talk about X-Wing stuff today, so
I was just saying
evidently none of this
90%
was
of it.
recorded.
I was just gonna. You're gonna jinx it. I was gonna say, don't jinx it now. Whenever we tend to go with all X-wing shows, something ends up happening with the recording. So now Chris jinxed it. So if this happens, we'll be talking about this again tomorrow.
Yep.
I look forward to it. We'll get more games in.
All right, Chris, that gives you some room to do some cleanup.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. If you have any questions for us, feel free to email us at lackoffocuspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at Lack of Focus Podcast on Facebook. You can follow us and watch the VOD on YouTube. You can see Sean's new layout for his painting desk onto his computer desk now.
Heck yeah.
Um, but that is on Dice Hate on YouTube. You can support the podcast, which it basically helps towards covering the cost of the editing software, which is Lack of Focus Podcast on Patreon. Or if you would rather pay just a fixed monthly fee, that would be Dice Hate on Patreon. But like, we never ask people to give more, and well, we never ask people to give anything, to be honest. But like, you know, if it's a case of a cup of coffee or Patreon, get a cup of coffee. But just throw us a buck here and there. It all goes into pot and helps. Um, quite a lot actually, but there it is. And yeah, like the Discord's been a little bit quiet through all of this, which has quite frankly been pleasant. Like,
Yes.
we've had some conversations about it, but like everyone's been pretty like happy to just wait and see. But yeah, if you join the Discord, you can make sure you're involved in any of those conversations. You can reach out for us to have reach out to me anyway to have a game or something. I play people on the Discord. You can join in our games when we're doing RPGs and our Saturday night game night, which we never do because we always have to record on Saturdays for one reason or another.
Always seems to happen.
Yeah,
Always seems to happen.
but there's a bunch of stuff we were doing. I was going to suggest actually. our Saturday night game, we could try Gloomhaven because apparently that's on Steam. Yeah,
Ooh.
because I've got
Yeah.
Gloomhaven but never played it.
Yeah,
I thought-
Gloomhaven on Steam, I think, is now in full, or is either now in full release or coming up to full.
Yeah, but
I
we
thought
could
we were
put- we
talking
could all
about doing
play-
Battlefleet Gothic.
We can, but that's 1v1. So
Oh, that's true.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think something we can all play together is always fun. But yeah, I don't know. Have a think about it. But yeah, if you want to be involved in that conversation, gotta be on the Discord. I don't write the rules; I just make them up. Well, that's true. I don't write them down; I just make them up
You do. Make them up as you go.
as I need to. But yeah, that's it. I think we're doing okay. I'm kind of just as a check-in because we're getting towards Christmas. I've still not sorted out designing the tokens, so I'll try and get a move on to actually get those done and see if we can get the evade tokens, well, lack of evade tokens printed, and then I'll try and get those out in January. So, ask me next time how that's going, because I really need to get a move on and doing that because it's been a year.
Keep pressuring them. Keep the pressure
Yeah.
on.
But yeah, we send out tokens once a year to all our patrons and stuff, and do some giveaways depending on what swag I've managed to accumulate over a year. So there's no like minimum level to that. People can abuse it if they want to. If that's how you get your kicks, you can cost us money and hope we go out of business. If you want to like destroy the podcast, that's the way to do it. Sign up for Patreon for a little bit, get the free stuff, and then just cancel it again.
Then bail out. Don't do that. All right, so that is going to do it for this episode 89. Sean, always good talking to you, my friend.
Great to be here.
Chris, a pleasure as always.
Yeah, it's always fun to be here, man.
All right, so that is going to do it. Again, I do hope you enjoyed. Let us know, comments down below, do all the fun stuff as far as questions, comments. If you got rage over road, by all means, we'll listen at least to it. But again, give it a try. So until next time, guys, as always, fly cat. Thank you once again for joining the Lack of Focus X-Wing podcast. Check out Dice Hate Productions for all of the latest episodes, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you again next episode.